Okay, so I'm going for like a Clockwork Orange vibe here. Hi everyone and welcome back to another Halloween inspired episode. My name is Tara East. I'm a writer, blogger, YouTuber, and the author of the mystery novel Every Time He Dies. And in this week's episode, I want to talk about writing in layers. So something I've noticed with my students and my coaching clients is this idea, this need to be finished with a project as quickly as possible. They come up with an idea on Monday and they expect to be holding the completed manuscript on Sunday, even though they have a full-time job or they're studying full-time or who the hell even writes an 80,000 word novel in 7 days anyway? Okay, I know Stephen King wrote Dolores Claiborne in like 9 days, but he was high on coke the entire time, and I'd argue that Claiborne is not King's best work, at least in my opinion. So many emerging writers think that they can just skip the revision process. They believe that when they finish that first draft, all they have to do is go back and fix their grammar and punctuation, and then they're totally free to go out and start soliciting agents. But your first draft is not your final draft. I totally understand that people want to get their book right the first time, but the writers who are able to do this are few and far between. They are the exception to the rule. Just today, I was looking at V.E. Schwab's Instagram stories, and she was complaining or venting on the fact that after 21 books and thoroughly knowing her own process, she still expects to write the novel perfect the first time. And she's still disappointed when she doesn't. There are many stages involved in the writing of a book, and each stage requires its own set of skills. How you approach the first draft of a novel is completely different to how you conduct a structural edit, and that is different from how you do a line level edit. Something you need to remember about the first draft is that this is the version of the story that you are writing for yourself. You get to be as loose and weird and unconventional as you like. That structure can be a shooting train that is linear and chronological, or you might wind up having 30 semi-random scenes that you then have to stitch together. The second draft is when you need to consider the reader. You need to look at the work and evaluate its strengths and weaknesses. You need to consider what the genre is and how you are either meeting those tropes or subverting them. You need to examine the plot to determine whether or not it makes sense. Oh my God, people, your plot has to make sense. You cannot spend the first 5 chapters following a lawyer around his firm and then introduce a spaceship. I have read that story, and it was bad. You must look at your characters and ask yourself whether they are being consistent, whether they are believable, or whether you are just making them do certain things because you're not sure how else to move the plot forward. Overall, you need to ask yourself, does this book work? And if it doesn't, then you need to develop a plan to fix it. For myself, I get my best ideas about a project when I'm on draft 5 or 6. And yeah, I kind of hate that fact. In those initial drafts of a work, I'm usually exploring various ideas and I'm looking at the different avenues I could take the book down. I'm still getting to know my characters, and with each draft, I just edge that little bit closer to what that book should truly be. The ideas and realizations that come to me by the time I've hit draft 5 or 6, I couldn't have had when doing the initial outline or brainstorming the book. It's only through engaging with the story and immersing myself within the world that I'm able to form more complex and dynamic ideas for the novel. You need to spend time with the story in order to figure out what it's really about. Once you identify what isn't working, then of course you have to start fixing it. But you can't fix everything at once. Again, people, layers. Our brain cannot look for character inconsistencies at the same time that it's trying to establish mood or write witty dialogue. When you're revising a work, you need to do it a step at a time. It is far easier to sweep through the entire manuscript with a particular focus on fixing your dialogue, and then do a separate sweep for fixing the plot, and then another round that focuses on developing the setting. When revising, it can be really useful to create a list of everything that needs to be fixed. Everything from the bigger, more complicated issues that you could maybe tackle on weeks when your schedule has a little bit more space in it, and the smaller, simpler issues that maybe you could handle on weeks where your schedule is a little bit more strapped. So much of writing is rewriting. And to be honest, I take revisions over a first draft any day. First drafts can be fun, but for me, there is so much wonder and freedom and play that can happen when you already have a lump of clay to work with. You don't have to go out and find your material, you already have it. To use another art reference, don't be in a rush to publish your first draft, because the real joy in writing comes from watching that initial impression you had of the work transform into this full, realistic oil painting, a portrait of a story that you couldn't see before you begun the initial draft. Now, I'd love to hear from you. How does working in layers appear in your own work? Are you often in a rush to finish, or are you happy to take your time? I'd love to know, so please leave a comment below. Now, if you'd like even more writing advice, you can of course check out the other videos on this channel, or you can head to taraeast.com and dive into the archives. While you're there, be sure to join my email newsletter, because when you do, I'll send you a free gift, and you'll receive a newsletter in your inbox every single Thursday morning. It will contain links to that week's blog and vlog, a letter by me, some resources I've recently discovered and think you'll enjoy too, and some tidbits that I only share via email. Thank you so much for being here again this week and for giving me your time. I really appreciate it. Now stay safe, stay calm, and keep writing, because the world actually does need more books, including spooky ones.